Hey, what's up guys? It's Toyhouze, and World of Warcraft Classic release is this summer. Have you decided which class to play? Because if not, this video is exactly for you, because we are going to go through all 9 of the classes and look at how they perform in a PvP environment, in a PvE environment with dungeons and raiding, and how they perform while trying to level to 60. Are you ready? Because we're going to jump right into it. First up, we have the Hunter, the #1 top leveling speed class in the game because of their pet mechanic. It has Growl, which is an ability that generates threat so that the Hunter does not even have to take damage. And then if you go Beastmaster, you can get Thick Hide. You have Mend Pet. You have lots of ways to self-sustain, and therefore Hunters also don't typically need to buy food and water, and can level very quickly. So that is their #1 strength, is that they are incredible at leveling and doing quests and things like that because of their pet. Next, if we take a look at dungeons. Dungeons, they are pretty darn good at as well because they put forth a good amount of DPS with their pet and themselves. They, unfortunately for the other classes, are going to compete with sometimes rogues for gear with that leather early on. They could compete with warriors for like a stat stick. They definitely would compete with a feral druid again for that leather gear. They can compete with a lot of different classes for gear, which is why sometimes people don't want a hunter. Which leads me to raids. Now, hunters are not super great in a raid environment because they do not pull the same DPS numbers as other classes such as warlocks or mages or rogues, so they don't really pull the damage. They also can take a lot of gear that other classes might need, and on top of that, really the only utility that they have to offer is Trank Shot, which is I think it's like tranquilizing shot, right? It removes an enrage effect from a boss, which is acquired in Molten Core. So hunters are not super great in a raid environment. However, in open world PvP, this is another reason I love playing a hunter, they are fantastic. You can literally just throw your pet into Bestial Wrath, send it on someone, and it can solo them pretty much if they don't kill it fast enough or react. And you can step in, pull the pet away, mend pet, or jump in, and you can kite people. Hunters are absolutely fantastic at open world PvP, especially if you're getting the jump on someone who already aggroed a mob. So they're fantastic there. Battlegrounds, same deal. Pretty amazing. As more classes come into the fray, yes, things can get dicey. A rogue can pop on you and a mage at the same time, and you can sort of get messed up, but still fantastic. Can kite. Maybe sometimes you have to hold an objective, so you can't kite forever, so maybe they're not as strong as open world PvP. But overall, Hunter is a fantastic class, and if this is your first time playing World of Warcraft Classic and you kind of want to play in easy mode, Hunter is my recommendation for you. Alright, up next is the Druid. Druids are an extremely fun class that has a lot of different abilities to perform in a lot of different environments. So, leveling speed, they're usually almost as fast as hunters, if not as fast, so they're really great with that. That's because of their sustain and their ability to heal themselves and to do a lot of damage. They're usually healers at level 60, but you can tank as well in dungeons as you're leveling. In raids, they have incredible utility such as Rebirth and Innervate. Rebirth, also known as Battle Res. They're really mana efficient when it comes to their healing, and in PvP, they're usually the people who are going to be carrying the flag because they got travel form. They have some really great talents in their talent tree to help them stay alive and to be mobile and to not get locked down. Like if you shapeshift out of your form and shapeshift into one, it removes all like snares, polymorphs. Druids are incredibly flexible in that respect. When it comes to open world, they're tough to gank because they can go stealth. That also helps for ganking people in world PvP. So overall, Druid's extremely well-rounded, can perform in all sorts of different environments. Really, really great class, and not a lot of people choose Druid. However, there are some weaknesses in that you probably will be competing sometimes for gear with rogues when if you're feral and you want that leather gear, but usually agility staffs are all yours. So Druid, ton of fun, lots of different capabilities. You get to enjoy lots of different roles, healer, tank, DPS as you level, and then you're really, really useful in raids later. Highly highly recommend trying out a Druid. Up next, we have the Warlock. The Warlock is a ton of fun to play because it is a pet class that is like a hunter, but you summon your demons instead of having to tame your beasts. And because of this pet mechanic and all of the amazing spells like Life Tap and Drain Life and all different ways to manage your resources, Warlocks are incredibly good at leveling. The only downside is that they don't have a way to move around quickly, so they cannot travel fast, which in World of Warcraft Classic there's going to be a lot of traveling between zones to go to different areas to quest, things like that. So they don't have aspect of the cheetah or pack. They don't have travel form or cat form, bestial swiftness, things like that, where the druids and hunters do. In dungeons they do really well because they do a ton of damage, and that transfers to raids where they also do a ton of damage. They're one of the top DPS choices for dungeons and raids, so if you're looking to be a damage dealer and you want to raid, do PvE, Warlock is a solid choice for that. Now, when we move over to PvP, open world, it's actually a pretty good deal as well because you've got soul stones. Let's say you get ganked, well, you can self-res once they go away. You're also really competitive 1v1. Your fear is really strong. Voidwalker Sacrifice is an extremely strong ability, and eventually you can get 2 of those. So you become very tough to kill in the open world. And then in Battlegrounds, those same open world benefits are there, but they're just a little bit weaker because you can get 2v1 or like double rogue on you or something like that. You're really strong if you're Horde Warlock, because then you don't have to worry about the Alliance having Will of the Forsaken because they don't have that. So your fear is basically a lot stronger if you're Horde side. So overall, Warlock is a real easy class to level. They're going to be wanted in dungeons and raids. In open world PvP, you're pretty good. So all around, Warlock is a very solid choice for World of Warcraft Classic. Alright, up next we have the Mage. The Mage is one of those classes that is just so flexible, powerful, and useful in so many different scenarios, and they're pretty popular. A lot of people like to play them. So mages can be played in all sorts of different specs. There's Frost, Arcane, and Fire. We're going to be measuring this in terms of Pyroblast performance. So basically, they're pretty good at leveling because they can conjure their own food and water. They basically they don't have to go back to town in order to purchase more, so they save some money. They can get their mount faster. They're pretty good at leveling because they do a lot of damage. They do have to eat and drink pretty frequently, but not a problem because you can conjure your own food and water. So that's awesome. Dungeons, really great to have. I mean, you can supply your entire group with that food and water that you're conjuring. You got the polymorph spell, which basically has no cooldown, so it's really good. Unlike Frost Trap or something like that, which is a CC but not as reliable as polymorph, or it's even better than Sap, the rogue Sap ability. So. Mages are fantastic for dungeons. That carries over to raids where they can also perform in that same capacity. Open world PvP, I mean, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but I'm pretty sure there was a point in vanilla World of Warcraft where polymorph had no diminishing return, and literally someone could just troll you and polymorph you into the end of time. Unless you had like a buddy to come save you or something. So polymorph really good for open world PvP and PvE if you're doing a big pull, but let's talk about PvP for now. Frost, extremely powerful. Frost Nova melee classes like warriors really struggle against mages, especially a skilled mage can walk all over them. Even a good mage can defeat a hunter in world PvP if they know how to Frost Nova and then sit inside of a hunter's dead zone being the area where a hunter cannot melee and cannot ranged attack, because I think they have to be a minimum 8 yards away in order to use their bow, and they have to be pretty much right on top of you to melee. So if you sit between that range, you can just dominate a hunter, polymorph their pet, and just get rid of them. So Mage is super powerful in open world PvP, super powerful in Battlegrounds, pretty much the same reason why they're good in open world. Blink is really nice. You can blink out of stuns. Mage is just all around such a great class. And added bonus, since there's a lot of traveling in World of Warcraft Classic, you've got portals to all major cities which you can help other people get around. Mage, solid choice for World of Warcraft Classic. Alright, Priest fans, it is time to talk about your favorite class, the Priest. The Priest is actually a really interesting class because it's one of the only classes that has racials within its own class. For example, if you play a undead priest, you will have Devouring Plague. That spell is only for undead priests, and the same is true for each of the classes, each of the races that can play priest. So that's a really interesting thing about priest. But let's go really quickly through the different environments that priests perform in. So let's start with leveling speed, like the rest. Okay, so leveling speed, priest actually is pretty darn good at leveling. They have a very, very good rotation efficiency. They usually shouldn't have any downtime, so you probably won't really need to buy food and water. You probably will, just in case you get double aggro or something happens, so of course you'll have the food. But, you really just, wand things down, put the hot on yourself or a shield, something like that. You have a really, really smooth ride to 60. And you're going to be very wanted in dungeons and raids. As you can see, measuring in Shadow Word Pain performance, very, very good in dungeons. 8 out of 10 Shadow Word Pains. Okay, they're really great for healing. They can help with the wand damage. They have a wand talent, wand specialization. In raids, priests are pretty much the best. I mean, they're the go-to healer. They give shields. They have amazing healing. They're going to be wanted in raids. And then PvP open world, they're a little bit vulnerable. They don't have a really good way to escape. Psychic Scream's really their only sort of ability to get people away from them. They don't really have a good slow because Mind Flay is channeled, so you can't really slow and run. So PvP, you might get ganked a lot, and it might be a little bit tough in open world PvP. Battleground's a little bit better because let's say you've gone Shadow and now you have a lot more damage at your disposal. Shadow Priests are extremely powerful. I've found when I was leveling, at least I think it was level 58 or something like that, and a Shadow Priest just like two-shot me or something as a hunter. So Shadow Priest can do a ton of damage really, really fast, and they've got Vampiric Touch. They've got some pretty good self-heals. They're actually really, really strong later in the game. Their only problem being mana efficiency, but Priest is a very solid choice if you want to experience some interesting PvP dynamics as Shadow, and definitely be needed in a raid environment as a healer. Alright, it's time for a Horde-only favorite. We got the Shaman. The Shaman is one of those classes that is pretty infamous for Wind Fury. Wind Fury being the ability to get extra auto attacks and can be extremely strong when you're holding a two-hander. But we're going to talk a little bit about leveling speed. So they're not super great at leveling because they don't have really great ways to be mana efficient. The more mana efficient you are, the better leveling speed you're going to have. But Shamans, typically, they're a little bit on the slower side. They do have some nice travel abilities with Ghost Wolf, but they are kind of on the slow end of the leveling spectrum. And that's measured in Earth Totems. Okay, so dungeons. Let's talk about dungeons. They're pretty darn good. You can actually have them be a great healer, a great DPS. The Shaman, you're going to want one in your group, so you really, if you're the Shaman, you're going to be wanted in dungeons and raids especially. This is really important. Shamans are super important for Horde raids. You're going to see tons of them you want probably like up to like 8 Shamans, one in each group, either for their mana battery capacity with Mana Tide Totem or Wind Fury Totem for all your melee DPS. Shaman Totems are fantastic for raiding and of course for dungeons, so that's why they're so highly rated for both of those. When it comes to open world PvP, they're not super good, they're not super bad. They can actually definitely take people out with Wind Fury if you're leveling Enhance. So they're pretty strong, but they're not the best. Battlegrounds, PvP, they're pretty darn strong. It really depends who they're going up against, but I mean, if you're really good with your grounding totem, you could even absorb a Palm Pyro, which would be incredible, and then you could probably even one-shot a lot of like mages or cloth wearers if you get a really nice Wind Fury proc. So they're pretty darn good in Battlegrounds, open world PvP, but they really excel and are wanted in the PvE environment, dungeons and raids. Rogues, the bane of so many casters' existence. Rogues are pretty good at ganking in open world PvP because of their ability to stealth, stunlock, ambush, backstab, and cold blood eviscerate. But when it comes to leveling, they're not the best because they don't have a whole lot of good ways to kill stuff in succession. They will have to rest. Stealth is helpful, but they don't have like a pet to tank for them, things like that. So they're not the fastest levelers. So that's their weakest point, because they're also really great in dungeons. They can do great DPS. They have the utility of sap to help with CC, and this also carries over to raids, where they can be very helpful with DPS and then giving that utility. Back to the open world we were talking about, they can gank like no other class. They have stealth, they have vanish, they have ways to get away. If they're the ones being targeted, they have sprint, they have crippling poison, they have all the things that they need to be super effective in the open world PvP, making them, in my opinion, the best open world PvPer. Comes to Battlegrounds, it's a little bit different story because there's more classes involved. They're not as great, but they're still top of the charts for PvP. Rogues are incredible. I'm sure you've seen some ridiculous videos online of what rogues are capable of doing, specifically undead rogues. With Will of the Forsaken, there is not a lot that poor warlocks and priests can do against a rogue who knows what they are doing. Highly recommend if you're into the PvP scene, ganking scene, or if you just want to do some dungeons and PvE. They're great for that as well.
All right, this one is near and dear to my heart. We have the Paladin. I played a Paladin in the Burning Crusade as a Blood Elf, but I'm going to talk about Classic. So, leveling a Paladin is pretty slow. It's pretty boring, and it's all right, but it kind of sucks. But Paladins are pretty amazing, especially because of their buffs. Blessing of Kings is one of the best buffs in the game. There's also Blessing of Might, Blessing of Salvation, which is extremely good for classes that struggle with keeping their threat down, which is a thing in Classic. Open world PvP, Paladins are fantastic, especially with their extremely powerful abilities. You know, honestly, I probably could have given them more. I could have given the Paladin more Ashbringers for open world PvP because they have Bubble Hearth, effectively the most powerful anti-gank tool in the game. You basically cast Divine Shield and then you can Hearth, and there's really nothing that can be done in Classic about it. So Lay on Hands is another amazing cooldown, which is absolutely amazing because it gives you, it costs the rest of your mana, but it gives you a full health heal. So essentially you could potentially have to kill a Paladin 3 times to defeat them in combat, making them pretty good at open world PvP and in Battlegrounds. Paladins, typically for PvE, really quick, you do have to typically be a healer because protection did struggle for a number of reasons, and retribution as well. So for PvE, you had to be holy, but for PvP, you could get away with being a very powerful retribution paladin, and for the reasons mentioned with Bubble and Lay on Hands. If you can get past the slow leveling, Paladin late game, a lot of fun, a lot of utility, best buffs in the game with Blessing of Kings. Really great class all around. Alright, the last class, the Warrior. This class is one of the hardest to level alone. They have the slowest leveling speed because they do not do very well by themselves. They don't do a ton of damage when you're leveling. They don't really have any like self heals. They don't have any good abilities to travel faster. They don't have much. So if you're looking for a very difficult time leveling, play a Warrior. From me playing a Hunter and then trying out a Warrior, I did not understand how difficult it was playing as a Warrior with leveling. But if you can make it through leveling dungeons, you're a Warrior, and you are pretty much the best tank a group could ask for. So I gave Warriors an 8 out of 10 under dungeons, 8 out of 10 Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, that is. And then for raids, 10 out of 10. I mean, Warriors are absolutely the best tank in the game. You can't go wrong. You're going to need one, and you're going to need many. So if you're looking to secure your spot in raids, Warriors are fantastic. Moving on to PvP. So you leveled this character for, you know, however long, because it took forever. And so open world PvP, as you're leveling, you might get ganked a lot, and there's not a lot you can do. This all changes later when you are geared and you're in a battleground and you have other classes to support you, when you suddenly become a 9 Thunder Fury out of 10 person, warrior in this case, because warriors, specifically arms warriors, when they're geared, are absolute monsters and will destroy everyone if they are good and if they are geared. And if they have supporting classes, for example, if a paladin gives them Blessing of Freedom and they're fully geared, they are going to destroy. So warrior, really, really hard to level, but the rewards can be tremendous if you have a little bit of help, a little bit of gear in the late game, and they can be a lot of fun. All right, and those are the 9 classes. I hope that helps you guys decide which class you want to play in Classic WoW. I know I've decided on mine. Hopefully now you're a little closer deciding on yours. Again, everything I just said in this video is my opinion based on my experience. I don't know if this is 100% truth, but you know that's how I've felt playing these classes. I hope it's helped, and I'll see you guys in the next video.